And I think I've known Arun for maybe about 40 years, but more closely since we started working on the Deming journey in late 90s. That's a time when we got to know each other. And you've been outstanding entrepreneur, visionary leader, champion of quality, and I believe a karma yogi, contributing to the well-being of society through education, culture, art, and music.
Thank you.
This has been phenomenal. And I remember when we had this ISQ Jamshedji Tata Award presented to you in, I think, 2008 or something like that. That is when I did some research to find out what you've done. And by that, later on, I got to know what research I did was so true, interacting with you. I think what is remarkable is that your unassuming approach, where you're able to meet people very easily, great ability to listen to everyone with full attention and a calm mind, irrespective of what level people are. That's a remarkable characteristics of a human being, which you have displayed through your interaction over the years. High standard of ethics and social conscience. Another attribute which you find is so rare these days, but you demonstrate. So I'm indeed grateful to you for having allowed us to associate with your company in late 90s and work together, where we learned a great deal.
Well, we worked together and learned together.
That is true.
Yeah. There was a lot of learning, I think, that was going on in many Indian companies. And even with the practitioners of TQM, they were also constantly learning, because the companies were all of a different nature, and the same didn't apply to all companies. So I think there was a cross-learning that was taking.
Joe, thanks for making it happen. So you were born into one of India's most respected industrial families. Your grandfather, late Lala Ram, built DCM. Your father, Lala Bharat Ram, expanded it. But I've always been curious, what was it like growing up in that household which is so famous? And did it feel like a blessing, or was it also a burden sometimes?
I would say largely it was a blessing, because my grandfather, and I learned a lot more from my grandfather than I did from my father. My grandfather, as you talked about me, was a very open-minded person who was respected by his workmen, his technicians, and by society in general. So he was very particular that even as youngsters, when we were 10, 11, 12 years old, we should sit at the dining table where he had the most brilliant minds of India coming for dinner, and they talked about how the nation had to be rebuilt. And so we had people starting from Pandit Nehru to Sarojini Naidu to Aruna Asaf Ali, who was a leftist, to okay, I'm forgetting that particular name.
Sardar Patel?
Not Sardar Patel. I think Sardar Patel had passed away by the time I was involved in these discussions that took place at the dining table. But there were like Advani. Sorry, I'm mixing up Advani with Acharya Kriplani. Acharya, who was also a freedom fighter and who was also very much involved with the writing of the constitution. So there were, and then of course there were business people who used to come. So I was exposed to this kind of a milieu at a very young age. And right up to the time that I went off to college, I got this huge amount of learning from extraordinary people who were at my grandfather's table. And so I was not uh, overwhelmed by the personalities. I just used to sit quietly and listen to them. And I think a lot of my learning came from the humility these people had in trying to rebuild the country. And so, your question of whether I was intimidated or I got something out of it, I would say very much. I learned a lot out of from my grandfather, and he was a very. He came from a very. Our family was not a very well-known family in Delhi. My great grandfather had started the Delhi Cloth Mills, DCM, which became DCM, and my grandfather built it up. And then he built up a lot of industries from all the way from Bengal to Punjab to Pakistan. So my grandfather had a huge vision of building new enterprises and, of course, education. He built the first commerce college, which is very well known, the Sri Ram College of Commerce, Lady Sri Ram College, and Research Institute, the Sri Ram Research Institute in Delhi. So he was, and this was not philanthropy for a namesake. He just believed in education for young people as being extremely important in a growing and a new nation. So I think when you talked about my various interests in life, education really started from the experience that I got from my grandfather.
Great. You all studied industrial engineering in Michigan, trained in Germany, and returned to India by the time you came to the licensing system in India.
Absolutely.
So when you came back to a protectionist, red tape heavy India, what was your mindset? Were you trying to bring international systems, what you learned, into Indian business, or Indian values into global thinking?
To be very frank, I came back, I was still a young man. I don't think we had ever experienced global thinking in India. We were always a controlled economy from the time we grew up. I mean, we were not a controlled economy before partition or before independence. It was a free economy. Industry used to grow privately. It was actually Pandit Nehru's idea of following the Soviet model of planning and control. So even before I came back from my studies, the whole scenario in India had changed, and we had become a command economy. So that's all I experienced in my life as a teenager and as a young man. So I wouldn't say that I could even compare. And of course, when I was in college, both at Michigan and I studied in Germany also, I was more into my studies and college life than observing what was happening in the industrial sectors of those countries. So I think I would say that I was uh, brought up with a mindset that this is the way industry runs and this is how it is going to be in India. And unfortunately, it continued even after Panditji's passing away in the same mold, right up to the time of liberalization, which happened in 91. But right till then, it was a little bit of opening up was happening in Rajiv Gandhi's time. But the real boost to industry came in 90.
So I also remember, when I recall, we're both the same age group, that those industry leaders who started industries prior to independence, they had a national agenda, like Lala Shri Ram, Walchand Hirachand, then TVS group, the Murgappa group, Tata group, Mahindras. They started industries as a means to a national well-being. To the licensing system, the whole mechanism seemed to have changed. There are two different categories of industry leaders you find who have grown subsequent to that. Of course, everybody is not the same. In manufacturing, particularly. In non-manufacturing, like IT, etc., there were no licenses, and people grew with the right kind of a mindset. Again, you find certain number of people, whether it's Infosys and others, who started coming back with the same national mindset.
Yes, this was one of the pitfalls of the license Raj, that straightforward businessmen who had grown up before independence had value systems which were uh, high integrity, ethical values. Uh, there was no question of corruption as a way of life. Uh, a lot of it started with the license Raj regimes that were there from even Pandit Nehru's time onwards, but more so in Indira Gandhi's time. And we started seeing that there were new entrants into the industrial scene who had no business experience, who had no background of industry. Suddenly, because of the license Raj, becoming very, very important large companies. But that is because of the favors that were given to them or favors that were bought by them. So that period was a different era in our society. And this continued right up to the time of liberalization. Unfortunate, but that is the way it was.
That is true. So when SRF was just beginning, what was your first real test? Was there a moment in those early years where you thought this might have been a mistake? How did you push through a totally new kind of a business, leaving DCM?
Yeah, so DCM was the mother company, and it had a lot of businesses under it, from textiles, which was the original business, to chemicals, PVC, plastics, a whole host of industry, sugar. All these were under the umbrella of one company called DCM. When the thought was given to starting a nylon tire cord business, we already were in DCM in the rayon tire cord business, but the rayon tire cord business, everyone realized, was going to be a dying industry. And the future was going to be in the nylon tire. So we thought, okay, why don't we get involved with the nylon tire cord industry? Fortunately, we got a license for it. Um and when I say fortunately, because if we had not got a license, that would have been the end of the story. But we got a license, and our value system always said, we are not going to ask for any favors and we are not going to give anything for it. So some people like us did get license. You made a good case and you did get a license. So we did get this license, and it was to be set up in Tamil Nadu. So the board of DCM decided that why not have a company which is promoted by DCM and not under the DCM umbrella directly. So it was an investment made by DCM, 40% stake, and the rest was in the public. And we set up this company in Tamil Nadu, not very far from Chennai, Madras in those days. And I was offered to go there and work in that company. To be honest, I was a bit reluctant. I used to joke with the family that मुझे वनवास मिल रहा है, and I am going to be sent to Lanka for 14 years, and I don't know anybody there, and I don't know how it is going to be. I was newly married, I had two children. So, any case, I went there and we laid the foundation of the factory and we started the factory. Now, this was all happened in 72. Unfortunately, in 73, the first oil shock came when the OPEC was formed and the price of oil tripled or became 4 times the original price. And our industry is so, nylon tire cord is solely based on petroleum. And we were in utter shock. The cost of the factory, putting up the factory, went up by 50%. And I was in charge of the factory by then. I was in charge of the company. And I was running around how to raise money to be able to survive. Of course, DCM put in some money, but I had to raise more money, and our shareholding in DCM came down. But that's neither here nor there. But the whole system was so rule bound, inefficient, that I couldn't just go to a bank and say, yes, the prices have gone up, the costs have gone up, but we will recover it because inevitably everybody has industry based on oil will have to raise prices. And if we raise prices, we'll recover the money. But neither the banks, which were all by then nationalized, nor the general public was willing to invest. And so this was a difficult time. And your question on whether I had any doubts at that time, this was one of the biggest. But even the bureaucracy and the banking system was highly of a control mindset. So, because of this financial problem that we had, we actually were running out of cash flow to even run the factory. And the day came when we would very soon have to shut down the factory. I went to the chairman of the Indian Bank, they were our largest funders for working capital. I said, I need permission to get a loan immediately of 2.5 lakh rupees to be able to take my stocks out of the warehouse because they were all under the bank's control. I need 2.5 lakh. Otherwise, the material will freeze in the equipment and it will take me 6 months to clean up the equipment. And he said, sorry, rules are rules. I can't give you an extension of loan for 2.5 lakhs. I went back and I told my people, just take the material out. We'll break the rule. And it was all mortgaged to the bank. I said, I'll face the consequence. Just take the material out. I can't have the equipment damaged. So we ran the factory continuously. I went back to him and I said, I'm very sorry to inform you, but I just broke your rule. And I took out the mortgaged material and put it into the factory. He gave me a loud shouting and he said, don't ever do that again. I said, I will never do it again, provided you also understand that the industry can't run like this. So this was a tiff I had with him. But hopefully it brought some sense into it.
That's great. How do you manage sudden changes in environmental regulations, like elimination of ozone depleting strategies that impacted your business?
We were aware of the fact that CFCs that we were producing were going to be phased out. And we had started the whole company business business, I would say, of refrigerant gases was started in the late 80s. And we knew that CFCs would eventually have to be phased out by 1999. So we had a window of about 12 years. But it was a plant that was a swing plant. We could make CFCs and we could also make HCFC. So we switched the whole plant to making HCFC. And HCFCs were still in demand and the demand was growing. It's a common refrigerant called HCFC 22, R22, and that was much in demand. So we didn't have a problem as far as the first ozone uh, depleting material, the CFCs, were being phased out. That was a challenge, but it was managed well by us, I would say, because we had originally set up a swing. There were some companies that did not have swing. So they had to invest again into making a plant to make HCFC 22 because they knew that the plant for CFCs would be closed down. But the good side of this was that as per the Montreal Protocol, we were to be compensated because we said at the time when we put up the plant, there was no Montreal Protocol. You had not decided that this has to be phased out by 1999. So you have to compensate us who have only been in production for 10 years. And so there was a pretty decent amount of money that was given to us as a compensation for phase.
Spoken about not bending to unethical practices in government contracts and expansion. Well known. So have you ever lost a major business opportunity because you refused to play the Indian short game? Was it worth it?
And not in my time. In my time, I think I was quite fortunate to get licenses for whatever we applied for. Uh, the only one which was kind of happening when we were starting SRF was that we also applied to the government to make tires. And there it became evident that there were many players who were wanting this license, and it was going to be given, the licenses were going to be given to people whom we could not compete with in the sense of handling the government. So we didn't get into it. And in hindsight, I would say it was a good decision or a lucky decision because we did not have to invest heavy amount of money into a business which otherwise would have prevented us from investing in more exciting.
Okay. You converted into an opportunity.
It was an opportunity.
Great. Today we talk about ESG like it's a boardroom tick box. Every company does that and report it. But you were talking about environmental responsibility long before it became corporate vocabulary. I recall even during our association with SRF and kind of things you were doing near the plant here and reclaiming land, building water bodies and things like that.
Yes. Perhaps this was something I learned from my grandfather. Don't waste anything. There is the smallest thing can be utilized, can be of value. And I'll just give you a very mundane example. You can say that it's a relatively unimportant issue. But my father, in his times in the 40s and 50s, there was no other way of communicating other than through letters. So every letter that he got, he used to take the envelope and he used to open up the envelope and he used to fold that envelope into a straight piece of paper and he used to make a pad out of it.
Mhm.
So all the letters that he used to get, he used to finally make a pad out of it. And he used to use that for his notes and for his for any work that he was doing internally, calculations or anything. So once I saw him doing this, I said, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "Why waste it? It's going to go into the dustbin. Somebody will have to collect it. Somebody will have to burn it. This way, I'm utilizing something which otherwise would have been treated as waste." So it's a small example of how the thought always used to be there in my mind after that, that what is it that we can do to avoid waste. So the the whole concept of ESG was not talked about, not known, but inherently we used to always, by my upbringing and my having seen it in my family, we used to just think of how we can avoid uh, creating waste or not utilizing waste if it had to be created. And I would say that this was a lesson well learned, well absorbed, and something that I've practiced all my life. So I think this is now something internalized. I can give many examples of what we have done in our company and in our facilities uh, everywhere. Uh, I mean, I think this is now practiced by practically every company in India. Any water that is discharged has to be treated internally and used for gardening. This has now become an old practice. It's not something very new, but every bit of water that is brought into the factory has to be um brought to a level where it can be used for gardening purposes or any other purpose that is not required for drink. So there are many examples.
Yeah. So let's go back to the 1990s. TQM was seen as a Japanese concept, not tested in India. While the American style management was in vogue, we were privileged to have been invited by Ram on behalf of SRF to support SRF's TQM journey, along with Professor Kume. That was a great privilege for us. Why did you choose to implement TQM at SRF? What was your personal belief that made you stick with it? And how did it gel with what you learned in USA and practice before TQM?
Yes, a very interesting question, because I was trained ultimately as an industrial engineer. That was my degree in industrial engineering. And many of the concepts there in industrial engineering were, uh, although Six Sigma had not by then come into vogue, but many of the practices of quality, um, uh, etc., were taught to us in our courses in America. My first exposure to what is known as TQM, and I had not heard the word TQM, was when we had a joint venture collaboration with Nippon Denso, which was started in, if I'm not mistaken, 84 or 85. And this was because Nippon Denso was one of the main suppliers to Toyota for starter motors, for alternators, for many other electrical systems. And we had in DCM a collaboration with Toyota, and that had come up in the early 80s, maybe in 82 or 83. And so we were pushed into going into a joint venture with Nippon Denso to start manufacturing the products that were required by Toyota. And if we were going to make them for Toyota, we would also supply them to other Japanese companies because there were 4 licenses issued for making trucks. One was Toyota, the other one was
Nissan was one of them.
Nissan, the third one was Mitsubishi, which collaborated with Eicher, and the fourth one was Mazda.
Right, Mazda.
So there were 4. So we said, okay, there should be a decent market. And then very quickly we also came to realize that 2-wheelers required electricals. So Honda had come up and even TVS had a collaboration with Suzuki. And by then Suzuki was becoming itself a major auto company.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, yeah, the market will be in good shape here. So we decided to go into a joint venture with them. And when I used to, and Ramanathan, as he is always called Ram, I started calling him Ramanathan, but now, of course, even I call him Ram. Ramanathan was the MD, CEO of Nippon Denso. Not in the beginning, we had Som Mittal as the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
But Som left and Ram became the CEO. And Ram got very interested and intrigued by the way that the Japanese used to run their factories. Because when he visited Nippon Denso and he saw how they were running their company and the shop floor, etc., he came back and insisted with them that we should follow the same practices. In any case, they were also keen that we should follow the same practice. So when I visited the factory, which was in not very far from Delhi, in UP, when I visited the factory, I used to observe that every tool that a workman used was always put in the same place after he used it. And I said, how do they know where to put it exactly? And then I saw that there used to be little chalk marks or white marks. So a plier had to be put in the same place, a screwdriver had to be put in the same place, or any other tool that they were using had to be put in the same place. And I asked Ram, why is it necessary that it should be? Because he said, I've learned from them that a workman should be automatically able to reach out to the tool that he needs and he knows exactly where it is. And this may be saving us a fraction of a second. But it is important because ultimately all those fractions of seconds lead to productivity improvement. I said, that's something I'd never heard of. And then whenever I used to go, I used to keep observing the different ways that they were practicing. By then I'd started hearing the word TQM. And I said, okay, so this is what TQM is. He said, no, this is a very small part of TQM. This is not TQM as such. But this is one element of what TQM is. So, unfortunately, after 91, when there was a huge crisis of foreign exchange in India, and we still had to import in Nippon Denso, SRF Nippon Denso, we had to import quite a bit of the raw materials, the special alloys from Japan, and even special copper wire from Japan. And suddenly, we found that we don't have foreign exchange to buy all these components. And Nippon Denso was furious with us. How can we run a factory if you cannot import these critical ingredients? So we said, we are bankrupt. The country is bankrupt. And they were so upset with us that they said, we want to get out of this. I said, look, you think you can manage it better than us? I'm willing to sell you my entire shares. You run the business. You take over the business. Because I'm not going to bribe anyone to get raw materials or anything. You want to do it, it's your business. So we parted ways, I think in 92 or 93. I think probably 93. By that time, they were very upset with us. And I also gave some thought to this, and I said, we've always been an industry which is a process industry, continuous process industry, whether it was tire cord, whether it was our chemical business. These were all continuous manufacturing business. So I said, somehow these two things don't gel. I can put my management effort and money into one or the other. I subsequently also sold SRF Finance, which was quite a successful company in the mid-90s. But that had nothing to do with the shortage of foreign exchange. But I can come to that also. But that has nothing to do with TQM either. This event of selling off the business to Nippon Denso got me rewards because I got the best crop of engineers and management people from SRF Nippon Denso into SRF, including Ramanathan. So Ram came with an entire team which had worked in SRF Nippon Denso. Because I told them, look, these were all people I sent from SRF, and I will take them back into SRF. If they were recruited by SRF Nippon Denso, you can have them, keep them. But anybody who came from SRF, I'm taking them back into it.
Okay.
So Ram and many of the brilliant engineers and people in the marketing, etc., came back to SRF. And so that was a gain for us and an eye-opener for us as to what TQM was all about.